My name is Guy Peterson. I'm the chair of the board of the Center for Architecture Sarasota. I welcome you today, and I would like to welcome our new members and our, I should say old members, but our former members or current members.
Yeah.
Current members.
Long-standing.
Long-standing.
First and foremost, I want to thank Vic and Sandy Motto for opening up their home to us today. It's an incredible treat for us. Where's Sandy?
Yes, yeah, she's hiding over there.
We had to pour a lot of wine down them to do this. They were very gracious and wonderful to do this for us. We really appreciate it very much. Sandy, as you know, is the vice chair of the Center for Architecture Sarasota, and a wonderful board member. Other board members here today are David Lowe, Jim Putin, Renee Glendening. So this is a very special day for us. We don't do many tours, house tours, at the Center for Architecture Sarasota. We're incredibly selective on who we choose, what houses we go into. They're very important to us. We like to bring in the original architects and landscape architects to explain the process, the design process they went through, and explain the house for us. So we do maybe 3 or 4 a year, and that's all we particularly do. So this is a very special house for us to do this. I'm not going to introduce my husband. I am going to say he's my husband, and Guy Peterson. He did the house. It was signed in 2005. It won a state design award in 2005. And Sandy and Vic bought the house in 2010 and did an immense amount of improvements to it and finished the house the way that Guy had really intended it to be, envisioned it to be. So we're really pleased that they did finish his vision for the house. So it's a very special treat for us to have this today. And I have you take over the floor.
Okay, all right. Well, I thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Vic and Sandy, for allowing us into your home. You know, as an architect, I get a lot of clients that would like a tour of a house, and you can only go back to the well so many times and say, can I bring somebody through? Because after they move in, it becomes their personal home, and it's their space, and it's not a public space. So I appreciate that very much for you doing that for us. There's a number of things about this house that are really special to me, and I think one of the ones that I'll start with is I've been very fortunate in my career to have done a lot of houses, but a lot of people think that our firm just does big houses and houses on the coast, or and that's not the case. And this is a house that I think represents a side of our work that we really gravitate toward and wish we could do more of. I've had a lot of people that I know that will come up to me and say, we love your work and we would love to work with you, but we just thought our house would be too small for you. And I'd say, no. I said, please, I wish you would have called us. It's not about the size of the project, it's about the quality of the project. And I think this house shows a different side of what we do, and I think it resonates with a big audience because of its scale and because of the materials that are used. So I think it's a very honest and I think it's probably, of any house, it's probably more reflective of the era of the Sarasota School. And when we designed this house, it was for other clients. In 2004 we designed it. It was built in 2005. They had a very limited budget, and they loved the Sarasota School of Architecture, and they wanted a building that spoke to those earlier days. And so the idea of this house kind of was born from those kind of concepts that were supporting that movement. And one of the things that is nice about this project is we're on the ground. A lot of our projects are in floodplains, we have to elevate them. And then you're up, you don't have the relationship with the ground plane that we had an opportunity here. We're up high on high ground, we're not in a floodplain, we can actually walk out and enjoy the landscape and not have to go downstairs to get to it. So for me, as one of the first things that I got to work with was relating to the ground, which was really important. And they also didn't care about a garage, and I think that's really cool because that goes back to the Sarasota School days of just having a carport, just to protect your car, not make the car look like it belongs in the house, but it's in a separate shelter, and then the house is the house. So that became kind of an important part of the mix as we started to lay this house out. The other thing is, Hawthorne is not a busy street, but it's a public street, and they wanted privacy from the street. but they also love the idea of relating to the outdoors. And so the official architectural term is partie, but I'll say the concept of the house is a very simple diagram. It's just an L shape. And you all are sitting in the east-west part of the L, and this is the north-south part of the L. But everything from the street is very opaque. Whoops, I want to knock this guy over. I'm in good company there. But it's very opaque from the street. There's a lot of privacy. There's a lot of layers. You don't really know what to expect when you get here. But it's about that arrival sequence of unfolding the experience. But then when you get inside the house, the entire inside of the L is open and expressed as transparent so that you get the relationship with the outdoors. And you can, the old adage, you bring the outdoors in and the indoors just flows to the outside. And that was the idea here of having this total transparency. We're facing south, looking this way, and this is looking west. And so we extended the roof out on both sides, 8 feet, and we have a lot of protection from the sun. And also gives a big covered area so you could move out of these spaces and then go out and sit by the pool. This part of the L is really the public side of the house, which is the living, dining, kitchen, family part of it. And then this L is all the private sleeping areas and bedrooms. The detailing of that, the material, the concrete is actually the construction slab that was poured, and they took great care to protect it during construction because we knew we were going to expose it. I'll work on a 12-foot grid. Typically, I start with that in all my designs and our designs. But this is broken down into 4-foot modules. This is a 4-foot grid, and if you notice, the grid follows the same lines inside and outside no matter where you look, and the columns are every 12 feet on that 4-foot grid. And there's a module, and that works with the concrete block, which is an 8x16 module, and so everything kind of starts to line up with all the different lines. The block is obviously kind of a reflection of the days gone by when they used to use a collar block and express it in Twitchell and Rudolph's homes and Jack West and Siebert and other folks that were practicing in Gene Lee. The quarries in Orlando are closed. You can't get that Orlando sand anymore, Ocala sand, excuse me. And when we were doing this, knowing we were going to have these gray floors, the owners, we decided let's go with a gray concrete. This is not just a gray cinder block that you just get off and you don't stucco or don't drywall. This is a special gray block that we picked the color, and it's a high density block because we knew we were going to expose the inside, and the outside is, it's what you see, and high density keeps the water out. So it's a special block that was specially made for this. But we rake the joints vertically and horizontally, so the module of the block becomes part of the detail and the texture of the space. If you look at the floors around, there's no baseboards, there's a reveal, so we express the horizontality of the house by letting the floors go under the drywall. And I think one of the most interesting pieces to me is these wood elements. And we use this concept of negative detailing where it doesn't hit the ceiling, it doesn't hit the floor, and there's this kind of black reveal. And that was actually a detail that I learned in graduate school from one of my mentors, Harry Merritt, who was the master of negative detailing. And the idea is to express this as like a wood building within the space. So it's a floating element that has its own identity. It's a volume that functions take place, and there's bathrooms in it, there's closets in it, but it's its own contained volume. And then as you move into the bedrooms, you'll notice the walls that go east-west become drywall again, and then there's glass above, so you can actually see down the entire through the bedrooms. And you get the anticipation that you can keep looking on down the building and read this as an individual monolith in the space. The idea of expressing the structure, the kind of, we wanted like a Miesian kind of expression of the steel beams and columns. Unfortunately, with hurricane codes, the aluminum gets bigger and bigger every year when you have to put aluminum glass in there. But the idea of expressing the structure so you understand how the transparent side of the house is held up. On the outside of the building, because it's opaque, the concrete block is the structural bearing walls. There's no interior bearing walls in the house whatsoever. It's all just, either the steel or the concrete block holds it up. One of the things that, as Cindy mentioned, that was a real honor for us, and it's always an honor when someone buys one of your houses and they want to give it a new life, is when Vic and Sandy invited us to participate with them in making some improvements and working. I'm going to introduce David Young in a few minutes, that just did amazing work here on the property to take this house to the level that I think we always envisioned it to be at. But again, we had a limited budget in the beginning. There was very little landscaping. We got the house built, but we didn't get a whole lot further than that. The pool was in, but there was no pool pavilion. And when Vic and Sandy bought the home, they decided that they would like to have a shade pavilion, that kind of something they can look out to and then be out there and look back at the house, and then a place to sit out by the pool that's even a larger covered space to entertain. So we were thrilled that they invited us to be part of that process. And so we took the language of the house with the steel columns and it's a little bit miniature version of the depth of the roof, but we created a series of walls and planes and created this pool pavilion that actually, if you look at it as a diagram of the site with the L and putting that in the corner, it becomes a perfect square. And so it kind of completed the whole geometry of the site by doing that. And it gives a beautiful backdrop to kind of give more privacy from the neighbors and extend the visual experience out to it. So that was a real thrill for us to be a part of that, and I appreciate it. And then they've done numerous improvements. The interiors, the built-in piece over here next to the kind of the burnt orange wall is new, and the artwork and the lighting, those beautiful Frank Gehry lights, and just they've done things to really bring it up. And then I'll let David talk about how he dealt with a very challenging issue of topography at the front, and other things that he did to really make this a special place. I think I'm forgetting anything. Again, I think the idea of arrival, I talk about it in the book, and I think this resonates a lot with what I was talking about for those of you who were at the gallery talk about the idea of using honest materials, exposing everything and bringing it back to just a very simple form. The kitchen cabinets are beautiful but simple. There's no doors on the upper cabinets, which I think is really cool, because then the glassware and the plates all become part of the sculpture of the space. And again, there's no baseboards anywhere, and it's just lots of little courtyards and experiences. So I thank you for the opportunity, and I thank you guys for coming. And I'll be happy to answer questions. But I'll introduce David Young, the landscape architect that I was very fortunate to work with on this.
Come up here since
Yeah.
back there, but things are perfect.
I get
here.
you away from the
All
top.
right,
I'll be the protector.
Good afternoon. My name is David Young, landscape architect, and our office is here in downtown Sarasota, but I grew up in Naples, so native Floridian. And some of the things that Guy described were some of our biggest challenges, working with Vic and Sandy at the outset of this project. I remember one of the first stories that I heard from Sandy was her getting stuck in a rut out in the front driveway in her car on the way to the airport, of all times. So that really kind of struck me as being kind of comical, but yet I realized the seriousness of everything that they were dealing with. And as a Floridian, the gradient here was something a little bit new to us, and dealing with that slope, the pitch down to the street was something we had to study for a little bit, just to make sure that it was dealt with correctly. So some of the first things that we recognized about the house was the beautiful scale. This is one of my favorite houses too, and love the scale. I've heard other people say the same thing, and it seems to sit in the neighborhood very, very well. So that was important to us, to make sure that what we did resonated back to the neighborhood, that we didn't really turn our backs on the neighborhood, but really kind of extend a hand out to the street and allow the house to be shown in a good light. So, and always working on a Guy Peterson house is great for us, because there is order and clarity of design, and for us that helps us advance our thoughts and ideas into the landscape. The 4-foot grid is one of those elements that you'll see if you walk around, especially articulated in the driveway. Then those grass strips that you see are on the 4-foot grid. We expressed them horizontally and edited the vertical one, or the opposite one. So that helped not just kind of draw your eye to the property and give some definition to that driveway and the other pedestrian walkways, but it also allows for water to be interrupted as it's headed down to the street. So, you know, there's a little bit of functionality with the aesthetics that were considered with
I think if you're on the street and you look at the house has a very horizontal feel to it. The horizontality of the walls expressed throughout the, you know, as you kind of go east-west. But the way he did the terracing of the landscape with these series of low walls, it just takes that whole horizontality and just keeps expressing it all the way down to the street. And it's, but it added another layer of, I was talking about these layers you walk through. They're lower layers, but it also just expressed, and I think strengthened, the idea of the floor to horizon, the horizontality, and things like that. So I think it was a huge success to a very difficult problem that you solved. So.
By the way, he doesn't like to share his space.
He doesn't. I know, I'm finding that out. Actually, this is probably the most important piece in the whole house, more than the house itself. And
Are there any questions for David or Guy?
Question.
yeah.
David, can you speak a little bit more about the courtyard, the entryway, the concept, how you envisioned that and executed it?
Yeah, the courtyard was here, so the privacy wall was in place, the gate was there too. And so the thought was really very simple. You know, we wanted there to be a surprise as you came through the gate, and to do something that didn't obviously screen the house, but kind of accentuated it. And we always like to present a little bit of a surprise or have something unexpected on the other side of the gate. So, but yeah, we didn't want it to be fussy or anything like that. So we created something that we felt had the order that the house had, and some clean lines. And so it's just an idea of, you know, a lawn space, some feature plants, and that really kind of draw your eye to the courtyard and then into the interior. I think though on the original schematic there was a water garden there.
Well,
And,
yes, yeah, we had you had the big pond with the dancing waters. And,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
With that?
we didn't spring for that.
Although you did for everything else.
Yeah.
We did.
That's great.
It has a very zen-like quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of quiet, and I think the lines were important to us in keeping. I think that's what kind of informs you sometimes about space or the quality of space or many things, right? You know, that edge detail and how materials come together is very important, much the way Guy described the reveal up there. So we, you know, we're always interested in expressing that in a clean way too, and feel that, you know, if you can do that and I think it just makes things feel a little bit better, not as fussy, and not as crazy, and it seems to have kind of a calming quality to it.
And it was the site of the only disagreement between Guy and David when David designed a pond that would hold fish.
Yeah, you remember this better.
And Guy had a bad experience with fish in the pond.
Yeah.
The birds eat them. When the first day you make a big investment, all the birds ate all of our fish. Remember that? Yeah. I just was stocking a pond for the birds. You know. It was expensive. Expensive bait.
You bought-
They were carp. We bought expensive carp, and first day we put them in, a couple of egrets and a blue heron just came and got them all. It was a couple $100 worth of fish, you know, and they were gone.
Well, I have to say that your work, both of you, is part of the reason we chose Sarasota. And the house is magnificent, the landscaping is magnificent, and the longer we live here, the more we like it.
Well, good. Thank you. Thank you.
It's enduring.
Well, appreciate that.